Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we have an incredible story to tell of how one Christian ministry has been standing in the gap for Israel and came to Israel's aid on October the 7th, and this is their story. And in this program today I am joined by two special guests from Wales. They are Sian Treharne, representing Bridges for Peace, and Michael, the director for Bridges for Peace UK. So you're both husband and wife, which is fabulous. Always good to have a married couple, and great to see you back on the programme, as well as you, Sian, making your debut. Michael, you were last on a couple of years ago, but you also brought on your international director, Peter, who did an absolute fabulous job back in September, and really gave us and our viewers a wonderful insight into how Bridges for Peace are making a massive difference in the lives of Israelis from October the 7th. But for our viewers, can you just remind them of how you came to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, or Yeshua, and how he gave you a love for Israel and the Jewish people?
I came to faith in 1981. It was a very difficult time for me. A lot of bullying in school, was getting messed up in a lot of different things. And I remember I used to walk the mountains in Wales. I used to love doing that. And I was on a crane one day and I just felt the presence of God surround me. And I just felt the Holy Spirit, and I was looking around, and I just felt God's voice speak into me. The following week I was in school, a new boy sits behind me, and his name was Mark, and he'd just become a Christian. And we got good friends, and he started to ask me to go to the church with him. And it was the 80s, and it was happy clappy, it was just, things were moving, and I just thought they were crazy. But I kept going. I just felt I had to keep going and going and going. And then I think it was a Colin Urquhart meeting I went to, and I got saved at this Colin Urquhart meeting. And after that, God really started working in me, and especially towards prayer, intercessory prayer. Even at a very young age, at 13, 14, started praying for Israel, because the church was very switched on about Israel, very aware of Hebraic understanding. And certainly I felt God calling me to be a watchman on the walls and to pray for Israel. So, and from that, it's just that was in me. I knew it was the right thing. I knew the Word of God was, moving in that. And I was actually one of the first volunteers to go with Bridges for Peace in the UK in '94.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, 30 years ago. That's impressive. And Sian, welcome to the programme, making your debut on the programme. So share with us your testimony, but also, because our viewers are watching and we have a married couple, you have to tell the story of how you met Michael and fell in love with him, and vice versa.
Okay, so I met Michael, our friend, mutual friends of ours wanted to go on a blind date, but didn't want to go on their own. So we were kind of two-third wheels in the car, and Michael said something funny. I laughed. I have an unusual laugh, which I'm not going to demonstrate for you. And our friend also didn't know it was me that was laughing. He stopped the car because he thought his fan belt had gone. And from there, that was it.
Wonderful.
We just knew.
We knew. When you know, you know.
Absolutely. And a little bit of your testimony as well, that'd be wonderful.
So I guess the most amazing thing for me, about 20 years ago, I developed a blood clot. It went up my leg, it collapsed my lung, and it went to my brain. It was incredibly painful. I've never known such pain. I couldn't move. I couldn't even move my head like this. So I was taken into hospital, and they did numerous tests to try and find what they could do, if they could do anything. And they woke me up in the early hours of the morning to say I had to say my goodbyes because I wouldn't be there in the morning. And it was whatever it was in my brain, I can't remember, but there was nothing they could do. They couldn't operate. So I was lying there in bed, and I just said to God, "Is this right?" And I audibly felt him say, "It's okay." And I'm like, "Okay, it's okay." So I had numerous doctors at the end of the bed telling me I had to ring Michael, I had to ring my family, I had to say my goodbyes. And I said to them, "No," I said, "God said it's okay." I didn't know what okay meant, whether it was okay that it would go or it was okay I would go to heaven. I don't know. But I just had that absolute assurance that if God says it's okay, it's okay.
Wow.
So Michael alerted, I didn't phone him. The next morning he came to the hospital and I wasn't where he'd left me. And he had alerted all the prayer chains around and people were praying for me. And then I think it was the day after that, no pain, nothing.
That's amazing.
I was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, and they told me, when you die, we'll cut the baby out. So I went home with no pain, nothing. They did the scans, they couldn't find anything. We had a follow-up appointment a few months later. And they were a panel of doctors, and the letter said, whoever's in charge, you know, bring me to the hospital for the appointment. And so in we went, and the doctor started talking to Michael, and he was saying, well, I can see she can walk. Can she communicate at all? And I'm looking at Michael, and Michael's looking at me, and he's like, well, why don't you ask her? Oh, right, how are you feeding her?
What a story.
God is amazing, you know, He is the God of miracles.
She should have been paralyzed.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, what a faith builder, though.
Yeah, they told me if there was any chance of me surviving, I would have been paralyzed.
Wow.
So
A walking miracle. That's
yeah.
amazing.
So and
Absolutely
that's,
incredible.
that is a very powerful, when that happens to you, you know that, I just said to God, whatever, use me. Because my life is in His hands, right? I shouldn't really be here. If it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be here. So whatever He asks of me, I will do.
Amazing. That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that so much. And Michael, do you want to just unpack for us the vision for Bridges for Peace? Because I love the work that you guys do. I love the humanitarian aid that you provide for Israel, building those strategic relationships with key Israeli individuals as well, and making a difference for Israel, particularly during this horrific time post-October the 7th.
Yeah, I think this is what really drew me to Bridges for Peace originally, is that it's practical. It's there with the people. It's the Jewish people. They've heard people speak about Jesus, Yeshua, many times, but they're not looking at. They're looking at what you do. And that's what strikes me when I'm in Israel now and back in '94 when I volunteered. They watch what you do, not what you say. That's the biggest demonstration, and this is what Bridges does well. We're there with them. We're doing things for them. We're working alongside them. We're standing up for them and being a voice for them, and they see all this, and it's an incredible testimony. Being in the schools with the children, is so important because they actually know we're Christians coming into these situations, and I've looked at how long we've been there. It is well over 50 years. From the initials when it started with the work and the practical side of things, as well as the educational, and I reckon we've touched over 1 million Jewish people in that time as an organisation. And honestly, we go many places and we say we're with Bridges for Peace, whether it's in the airports or, in the streets, and we say, and they say, oh, we know Bridges for Peace, you helped such and such, or you helped this lone soldier, or you helped my nephew, or you helped this family. People know who we are. Like I went to a dentist once and he said, oh yeah, I knew you found the Douglas Young. He used to give us lifts in his car, and that's the testimony that people recognize who we are. They know they can trust us in these days, and we don't leave. And this is the thing about October 7th. Everybody stayed in Bridges, nobody left. And it was noted, it was well noted, because a lot of the American organizations left.
Yep.
And that was noted. And even that got onto some of the front pages, So, yeah, and also the educational side as well. I mean, the Jewish people, they help to input into that because of the Hebraic understanding. There's trusted friends we have like David Nekrutman, Moshe. And
he's a great guy, by the way.
Yeah, Moshe in the Old City. These people input as well and help our understanding, and we can help the church with Hebraic understanding. And that's what Bridges really does well, and which is what we love doing, is educating people. But also I'm very practical, so I'm being practical when I go to Israel, doing the food bank, packing bags.
We're going to see a bit of that later.
Yeah.
We're going to see a bit of that later. And Sian, just share what it's like to volunteer with Bridges for Peace, particularly as you guys are based in Wales. So it's wonderful that we have representatives from Wales, particularly for our Welsh viewers.
I'll be honest, it's a real privilege to be able to share what we're doing, but to be able to teach and educate. I'm a teacher, and that's what gives me joy, is to share the word of God wherever we're going, from being in a church or from being on the street. You know, I was talking to my daughter's driving instructor this morning, and he said to me, "What you said to me last week, he said, I'm still processing it." He's not a believer, right? But I was sharing to him, he was asking me about what is going on with Israel, what is happening, because the news is dreadful. To be honest, the media doesn't reflect what's happening and the truth of things. So I was able to tell him, and this week he was saying to me, I'm still processing that. Mm-hmm. But we have to stand and be counted, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not just in the Christian community, it's with everybody you meet on the street. It's amazing the conversations you have in shops, you know, and the difference you can make just to provoke people into thinking and to let them kind of wonder, is this truth? What is the truth then? You know, and that's so important.
No, absolutely. And Michael, do you want to just share with us your very powerful story of October the 7th, where you were on October the 7th and how you and the ministry of Bridges Peace responded to the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history, where Hamas murdered over 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals, injured between 6,000 and 7,000, took 250 hostages to Gaza. And having been on that Gaza corridor and the south of Israel, what Hamas did on October 7th is just beyond horrific. It was like a mini Holocaust, or certainly was a pogrom.
Yeah. We were in Japan. We were visiting friends, but also doing a speaking tour. We got the news was coming through on the TV, and then all of a sudden my phone just lit up with just reports, and the scale was starting to become apparent, the huge scale of what was going on. And I remember just being a little bit in shock, and I just sat and prayed, and I said, God, I'm in Japan, what can I do? Next thing you know, we get a call from our CEO, Peter Fast, saying, I know you're in Japan, but UK is the closest country geographically to Israel to get aid across. We've just had a list from the medical corps, the IDF, of first aid kits, tourniquets, any bandages, because they had nothing. They had run out very quickly in the south because of all the injuries. And he said, you're the closest. Also, you've probably got a lot of access in the UK to materials that are needed. Can you do something? And I said, yes. So we sat down with the list. We looked on Amazon. I had a budget, and I was trying to buy on Amazon, and when I went to pay, it said, you're in Japan, you can't do that, you've got to be in the UK. So we rang my daughter at 2 o'clock in the morning, and she put the order through, which was quite substantial. And when we got back, it had been delivered, where we cleared up most of the B&M bargains with the first aid kits. We just bought literally 200-300. Wow. And they were asking us what we were doing, and we were saying we were taking them to Israel, and they said, wow, that's incredible, good on you, you know. And so we packed it all in 8 suitcases, but I could only get Sian on a flight. So we booked the flight down in Heathrow, which was probably only about 6 days after, so it was about the 13th of October. And Sian went by herself with the 8 suitcases. I dropped her off, and then she was literally.
Yeah, so Sian, share with us your story, because Michael was saying how that you were flying into Israel and you came under attack from Hamas's rockets. I mean, that must have been scary. So share with us your story. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was an interesting flight.
I can imagine.
Yeah. we were coming into Israeli waters, and the pilot came on the intercom and he said, "We're now entering Israeli waters. I'm turning all exterior and interior lights off the plane. I don't even want to see a mobile glow in the cabin." So everybody went quiet, and it was very subdued and quite dark on the plane. And I was trying to finish my book because I don't like landing halfway through a chapter, right? So I'm down here looking. And the lady next door to me, she starts screaming. She's like, "There are rockets, there are rockets." And I'm thinking, well, you know, October the 7th happened. And the stewardess comes straight down the aisle, and in Hebrew, she turns to this lady and she says, "Sit down and shut up."
Sheker Shav.
Okay. Okay. So my window wasn't here. It was back here, and I was, like I said, trying to fish I wasn't looking out the window. But there was a flash out the window. In my peripheral, I could see that. And I thought, well, nothing of it. And I finished my book, and then we landed. And my son, who lives in Israel, he came to pick me up from the airport. And his first words to me were, "Welcome to the war," which was quite subdued, you know. It was quite a thing to say. And then he said, "Did you see it?" And I'm like, "See what?" And he said, "Well, they were firing rockets at the plane over Ben Gurion and at Ben Gurion Airport, and the Iron Dome took it out."
Wow.
So that must have been the flash.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite a journey.
Yeah.
I spent the week volunteering in the food bank in the mornings, and packing up the supplies and everything that I brought. And then in the afternoons I would walk the streets of Jerusalem just talking to people. I went to Yad Lachish because a lot of tourists go there, and obviously there were no tourists in Israel at this time. So I thought, well, I'll go and buy some products and support them a bit. And as I was walking down the street to the door, the two ladies were out receiving a food delivery. And they turned to me and they said, "You came in war?" And we stayed with them for quite a while, talking with them and just fellowshipping with them. But there were numerous people that I spoke to on the streets and in different shops. And they were all saying, "We feel very much alone." And then they would say, "Where are the Christians? Why aren't they speaking up? Why aren't they standing up for Judas? Isn't their Bible our Bible?" Right? And it was just such a privilege to be able to say, actually, there are Christians. I know of many Christians who are praying for the Jewish nation right now, and who are sending aid. And it really was powerful to be able to stand there and say that. You're not alone. We stand with you. We're bringing this aid to you. We are standing with you, no matter what.
Incredible. Michael, when did you get to Israel?
Well, we had to take more aid out. So we were, as Sian was away, I was busy ordering more. We'd found some proper supplies, not just BM bargains, but proper first aid kits that would make a difference, but also respirators, field things that the medical IDF would use, because they don't just treat the civilians, they treat in also the insurgents as well when they're out there, which is quite shocking for some people to realize, but this is what the medical corps does. But they needed certain types of medication that, that they'd run out of. So we bought en masse, just boxes and boxes. It turned into about 18 suitcases.
Wow.
So me and Sian went and took the 18 suitcases. Air Al were fantastic. They allowed us to take them for free. There was no charge. As we were going through, they were just looking at these 18 suitcases, saying, "What is this?" And we were explaining. And the girls on security were crying.
Wow.
They were literally, the Israeli security literally started crying and said, "We can't believe you're doing this." Then the woman on the flight desk was like crying as well as we were putting them through. And she was saying, "I can't believe you're doing this. This is incredible, what you're doing." I did ask for an upgrade, but she said, "No, the flight is full." Because obviously there was a lot of reservists coming from all over the world to go to Israel. And we were lucky just to get seats on the flight, to be honest. and to get all the baggage on as well.
So what were your impressions when you got to the south of Israel? Because you probably would have been one of the very first people, foreigners, to actually see the devastation caused by Hamas as well. I mean, the journalists would have been there from covering from the all the different networks covering it, but what was your impression when you were there?
I think it was just, as we drove down, it was just, you could just see people so moving away from the south. You know, the roads and the motorways were just chaos. And as we were going in, then you realize that there was still fighting going on. We went to one of the forward places right on the Gaza border to deliver the aid, and we could hear the gunfire still going on, because this was about...
Inside Israel?
Yeah.
Wow. There
was still, even when Sean was there were still insurgents all over. I mean, like our son went down on day 2 with Peter Fast, and there were insurgents around them in the trees. You know, a lot of them had run out of bullets at that point, the insurgents, so they were hiding, couldn't get back into Gaza. But when we were there also, there was all this going on as well. They were still rounding up, because we were there about 3 weeks after October 7th, so towards the end of the time, and we'd gone down to deliver this aid. So yeah, I mean, we went to Kibbutz Be'eri, and it was shocking. I personally was traumatized, I think, as a word, because it's not just the destruction of the buildings. When you're walking around and you see memorials to where somebody died, and they've got bits of the person's personal items still there that Hamas left, and you see the candles, and you see like personal badges or things that the person, and then it's just a little plaque about who it was, you know, and then you see 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then all of a sudden in Kibbutz Be'eri you've seen 20, 30 of these little memorials all over, and this is when it starts becoming real. But the devastation to the houses, you know, I've shown all over the world now different videos of the devastation, which was never shown on the media. People didn't realize the destruction and the way the houses were burnt. So
yeah, so let's have a look at one of the kibbutzes that was absolutely devastated by Hamas back on October the 7th. Having visited kibbutz Nir Oz myself, I've seen firsthand the evidence of Hamas's evil terrorist, mass terrorist attack back on October the 7th. Take a look.
On October 7th, over 3,000 Hamas terrorists invaded Israel. They came from Gaza. It's just a couple kilometers from where I'm standing. I'm here in Kibbutz Be'eri. Bridges for Peace directors and managers have come here to walk through this kibbutz. Now, this was one of the first kibbutzim that was hit. 400 terrorists, as thousands of missiles were shooting into Israel. 400 terrorists breached the fences and came in and attacked the outer neighborhoods. 140 homes were completely destroyed, a home like what I'm standing in right now. Now, 1,200 people lived here. This was a beautiful kibbutz before October 7th. They were hardworking, they were industrious, they did incredible things. But on October 7th, 98 people here were murdered. People were taken out of their homes, kidnapped, taken hostage into Gaza, and this is a place of death and destruction. This morning, Bridges for Peace leaders and directors, we went to an avocado field. We harvested over a ton of avocados with local Israelis from this area. We were talking to a number of young girls who, when they heard that we were Christians, when they heard who we were and what we were doing here, were absolutely shocked. And you know what their response was? I thought everyone hated us. Now, we give testament to this. This is a place where you can see the result of evil that has come into this place. And I cry out to you as Christians. We stand with Israel, we pray for Israel. But during a time like this, our prayers need to count. We need to take action. We need to help. You can help by assisting us with our crisis fund so that these types of horrors become distant memories, never forgotten, but memories. And in order to reach for the future, we can heal, we can bring and show the love of God and restore shattered lives. We are here in this moment to show love and support. Will you join us? Will you be a light?
As you can see, a very distressing but also an extremely important report put together there by Bridges for Peace, showing the destruction that Hamas caused back on October the 7th. Sian, what was your impression when you saw that? Because, I mean, I went in of January and February of this year. You were literally both there within kind of weeks of this massacre, when it was even more raw, and the nation of Israel would have been absolutely reeling. Just share with us your thoughts on what you saw and also the reaction of the Israelis as well.
I think it was very overwhelming. It was so much you couldn't really process what you were seeing. I mean, the first time I went, it was a week after the outbreak of war. And we took the medical aid down to the border, in the Gaza envelope. And Route 6, I know many of you have probably driven down Route 6. It's usually quite empty, right? You can fly down Route 6 normally. And it was chock-a-block full of military going south and civilians still fleeing north, because they didn't secure the borders from, these terrorists for 3 weeks. So they were still in the areas. And so we were supposed to deliver this aid to these people, and the commander, he phoned and he said, just stay where you are, I'll come and get you. And when he eventually did, he said, I couldn't fetch you earlier because we were dealing with an incident. So obviously they had terrorists in the area and they had to secure the area before we could take the aid, the food bags and the medical aid to the people. It was just, there are no words to describe what you saw. It's too traumatic, and I can't imagine how the people are dealing with it. The trauma, it's just huge. But it was incredible really, because every step of the way that God has used us, He has opened doors for us to be able to do this. I was speaking in Newport one week about needing aid, and I had a list, and then somebody in the congregation said, I can get all that for you. And then I was speaking somewhere else in Bridgend, same thing happened. I know somebody that can sort all that for you. God went before us every step of the way, and all we had to do was walk it out.
Well, yeah, you've done that incredibly. And Michael, also share how the ministry has kind of responded to the challenges of October the 7th. I mean, the first thing you said early in the programme is that you guys didn't go anywhere. When, the opportunity to flee Israel, decided not to flee. I mean, that was the first huge message that you're sending out to the Israelis, that you're here to stay. But share with us how, as the ministry, kind of responded to this huge humanitarian crisis that Israel's never experienced before in its history since its recreation back in 1948.
On October the 7th, our CEO Peter Fast went straight into the offices, was receiving phone calls from the towns, because obviously we, like Kibbutz Be'eri and quite a few of the kibbutz, we actually provide food down there on a regular basis to the schools. We support Ethiopians that have come in, which is their favorite area to go to because it's warm and they're used to the heat, but it suits them. So we've been helping with the Aliyah down there, and so we were having mayors calling people who had been displaced, needing food was the big thing, because food was running out very quickly. Also with the terrorists around, people couldn't get to food and water, basics. So Peter Fast was also being contacted by the IDF, saying that they needed medical aid for the medical corps. We were quick responding to that. We this is when we received the call. So, but I think the provision was amazing that we had already had a large sum of money given to us weeks before, and we were kind of like, what is this for? And obviously we had the money in place to get going on day one. My son and Peter went down on day 2 to deliver 250 bags of food and different types of aid into the hot zone, into a kibbutz and into Sderot and those places where there was still live fire, there were still insurgents. You know, that was incredible. And then, yeah, it's just like the requests were hundreds. And we did our best to do what we could do. But we had stores of food as well. So, I mean, we kept going every other day, taking more and more aid down there, even with the risks. But nobody left. Nobody wanted to leave. They knew that this was a time when it was time to stand with Israel. And it would have been easy to go. There were flights getting people out, but everybody stayed, saw the urgency, saw that the media was not reporting. After a day or two, it had switched to the Gaza side of the story. We were still making the videos that some of you've seen and just getting the information out to our prayer teams around the world. We have 18,000 people subscribed to the prayer letter, and just getting people praying and then getting the aid out, and also talking to the government and showing that we were there available and use us. And this is when the medical requests, were becoming more particular. They were needing certain things that they were running out of. So yeah, I mean, but everybody just went into like not survival mode, but into a professionalism that they knew what was needed to be done, and they did the best that they could do.
Yeah. Amazing. And Sian, tell us the carnage, because I think unless you've been there and unless you've seen the footage, and sadly I've been there, I've seen the footage shown from Hamas' his own body cams and the CCTV cameras, and when you see the kibbutzes destroyed and the cars destroyed and then the videos, you can put it all together. But this would have been a time when, you know, we'd have burnt cars with bodies in it, and markers are still an investigation going on. So share with us how literally you both would have been literally in a war zone.
Yeah.
And what's it like to be as a civilian in a war zone? And even the Israeli, I think, paramedics couldn't actually deal with this because there's nothing like they've experienced before.
No, I think when you're there, it's too much to process, and you literally go into, what can I do? How can I do it? You know, it's see a need, meet a need. And that's what it basically comes, that's how you function in that sort of situation. Because if you stop and think, it's too much, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And share some of these incredible humanitarian aid projects that Bridges for Peace are doing to bring restoration and hope to the Israelis. And I think you've demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt your love as individuals, Christians who love Israel and the Jewish people, but also showing it as a ministry in a practical way as well. Just share with us some of the incredible projects that have been initiated since October the 7th.
So we already had one project, was called Widows and Orphans, and after October 7th there was a lot of widows and orphans that have been moved to hotels that from the south to the Dead Sea. They were putting a lot up in there, and also into East Jerusalem in some of the hotels there. They had nothing, absolutely nothing, no children's clothes, just no toys. They'd had to leave all toys. The children, that had been evacuated to these places, they had nothing. And we quickly started using the Widows and Orphans funds, because we had money in place to buy toys, blankets, nappies, practical things that these people needed. Since then, this Widows and Orphans Fund has been helping with counselling, because a lot of these women and children witness firsthand the murders, atrocities in their neighborhoods. They survived in bomb shelters where they've been set on fire, you know, the trauma. So we actually, as an organization, worked with Jewish organizations to employ psychologists to go down and counselors to work with the children, to get the children to really find a peace, you know, and the parent, you know, there were many parents that had been split, and others that their husbands had gone off to join the IDF, and you know, so really just bringing sometimes just chocolate or biscuits, or you know what I mean, things that the children would enjoy having. But yeah, I think that's the crisis fund as well, and was really established then to deal even more deeply with the other side of things. So it's not just the counselling, there's also, like when they're in the hotels, they needed fridges and other things ready to kind of like to when they were going to move back to the kibbutz or to other places, so they had things, so they lost everything. Everything was destroyed. So at least they feel like they had hope that when they move somewhere, they'd have a washing machine, they'd have a fridge, they'd have things that they needed for their basics when they move. And a lot are starting to look to move back now that the things have changed in the areas, in the north and in the south. And, you know, and they recognize these things are going to help them just to rebuild their lives.
So let's have a look now at Bridges for Peace in Action, rebuilding lives at one of the kibbutzes that was devastated on October the 7th, known as Kibbutz Berry. Have a look.
Reverend Peter Fast here, and Michael Treharne, the UK National Director of Bridges for Peace. We are here picking avocados. This avocado orchard is owned by the people and community of Kibbutz Berry. Now, on October 7th, when Hamas invaded Israel and massacred people, they kidnapped people, they did absolute horrific, barbaric atrocities on the people of Israel. But Israel, when you think of Israel, I think of life and rebuilding, and we are here as Christians to demonstrate love and support to the people of this community who have lost so much. So Bridges for Peace directors and managers have come down here to pick avocados. And Michael, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, we felt that we needed to do something to respond. We've already brought medical aid, but we felt like we needed to do more. We need to do something practical, something that shows the people here in this kibbutz how much we care and how much we stand with them. Because I tell you, they need to see it. And just talking to the youngsters today, they're just absolutely blown away. They're already taking pictures. They want to share the news that we're here, standing with them, working and doing something real and practical on the ground.
Amen. So you can get on board with this. You can pray. You can give to our crisis assistance. You can join in what God is doing, bringing Christians and Jews together and bringing healing and restoration and showing the love of God to the people and nation of Israel in this moment.
So there we go. Incredible work being done by Bridges for Peace, helping to restore broken lives after the horrors of October the 7th. Michael, I think our viewers need to know this, that those avocados you're working on the farm in the kibbutz ended up in M&S in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And you bought some?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we knew they were fresh.
I'm surprised that you didn't actually bring them in 12 suitcases that you already sent out to Israel and then pack them all with beautiful avocados.
It was funny because we were picking them and we were packing them, and we picked a ton of avocados, which is quite a lot. And then we were moving on to go to the Kibbutz Berry for a tour with the two gentlemen in green that you saw. They were survivors. Wow. One had held the door to his bomb shelter for 16 hours while the terrorists were trying to break in. And actually they set fire to his house. They put a tire on the stove and set it on fire. So the smoke black smoke would fill, and he held the door and saved his family. Wow. So that was, but yeah, we didn't take any avocados, and then the guy that was taking us around said, well, why didn't you? He said, you could have as many as you wanted. And he said, because to be honest, a lot of the crops were ruined. There's nobody to pick the crops. That was the thing, why we were there and why we were picking avocados, is because millions of tons of fruit was just rotting on the trees in orchards all over those areas and all those kibbutz teams. And that's why those young girls were there, coming from college to help pick so that Kibbutz Berry could have an income, that they could have money towards rebuilding, even though the government will provide. but it's also that the trees needed to be picked. They needed that sort of care. Otherwise, the rot that would be everywhere. So
wow.
it was a very practical.
So important. And Sian, we've looked at this from how Bridges for Peace have responded to October the 7th, but also can we reflect on the impact that October the 7th has had on the leadership team for Bridges for Peace in Israel? I mean, we're talking about surviving October the 7th and then the rockets and missiles that are fired in Jerusalem all over Israel. Israel being at war, firstly with Hamas and then Hezbollah in the north, and then also having to deal with 2 rounds of Iranian cruise missiles fired at Israel, and having close Israeli friends who are living in Herzliya. This was absolutely frightening for them. They only had a few minutes to get to the bomb shelters before these Iranian missiles came over.
Yeah, I think people are acclimatizing to this. I mean, certainly we were in Israel a little while back and a cruise missile came over our hotel and nobody moved. Nobody ran for bomb shelters. Everybody, it was just, oh, well, that's that, But there's been several phone calls we've had from Eilir Wynn, our son, and he's in the bomb shelter. He spent countless nights in bomb shelters. And then I ring him the next day and he's in the hardware shop or he's in the supermarket. Life goes on. You have to make a decision, I guess, that you have to move on and you have to live life, no matter what the circumstances are around you.
Yeah. Which is the Israeli mentality.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Michael, a bit closer to home, how has October the 7th impacted Wales in terms of the rise of Jew hatred, the anti-Israel sentiment? We know what's happened in London, we know what's happened around Manchester, but what's actually happened in Wales in terms of October the 7th?
So in the cities, Cardiff and Swansea, there's been regular marches by the pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza people on a weekly basis, as in London. They've been well attended, and Wales is not normally known for that sort of anti-Semitism or for pro-Palestinian or anything. Wales prides itself on being a welcoming place. People are welcome in. When Ukraine happened, we welcomed the Ukrainians and made a place for them. So when we saw just the volume, and like Cardiff on a Saturday would become a no-go zone, especially for us and for the Jewish community as well. Jewish community had to stay away from those areas because it just was not safe. There's a known jihadi group in Cardiff, which is, you just wonder why isn't something being done about that. But yeah, I mean, we organised a march. We were doing the March of Life with Tubenham, and we had everything in place. Next thing you know, we get informed that there's been a credible threat against the march because they'd found out the pro-Palestinians, and we were advised to cancel it. The Jewish community, we didn't want to put them at risk, so we chose to cancel it. Just for safety concerns, and not just the liability. We just thought we'd already done one march, which you've got a video of, but that was for the hostages. And we were very fortunate that a lot of the pro-Palestinians were in Swansea doing a massive march in Swansea while we did this one in Cardiff. But we had the Jewish community there and they felt strengthened by it. Because there's a family that has a hostage in Bridgend, which is really close to us and to the Cardiff community. We've been to the shoal with these people. We've stood alongside them as they prayed for the hostages. It's why we wear the pins. But the Jewish community are starting to find strength. We went to the lodge, we took 2 buses up to the big marches in London when there was about 105,000 attending. And they were very fearful going up. Will there be police? Will there be security? And I said, look, we'll just see, let's just go. We'll go on the 2, but don't wear any Israeli flags, anything that might. But when we got to the march, I like to say that the community went up like lambs quietly, but came back as lions.
I can believe that. I can definitely believe
They
that.
were strengthened by seeing the numbers, and when we did the one for the hostages in Cardiff, they were there. A vast majority of the community in Cardiff turned out, and from Bristol and from Swansea.
Amazing.
So there was more Jewish people than there were Christians at that march.
Wow.
So that was an incredible day. It really was, and very, very productive, I would say, for the Jewish community.
And Sian, I have a deep affinity to Wales. My wife is from North Wales, and of course I spoke many times at Nancy's farm just outside of Cardiff, and have very close Christian friends in Phil and Bren who are wonderful supporters, and they love the programme, so thank you for your support, Phil and Bren. And the reception always received at Nancy's farm was incredible, but also had a very special a special event back in 2016 watching Wales play Israel in the European Championships. And what impressed me the most was watching that at Cardiff's Arm Park was there was a small demonstration outside, nothing massive. But it's when the Welsh fans started singing Bread of Heaven, which usually kind of to motivate the Welsh players, had the opposite effect on the Israelis, who actually started playing better after they were singing that, knowing that this was their God, the God of Israel. The game was 0-0, but it was a great experience to be there and to experience that. But share with us the impact really that October the 7th and this unprecedented rise of Jew hatred has had on the Jewish community in Wales. I know it's small, but it's a significant one.
Mm-hmm. I think, especially like when we took them up on the buses to London, I'm seeing more confidence in them. That there's always been a lot of fear, but they were emboldened by that. And since when we did the march in Cardiff for the hostages, a lot of the Jewish community turned out and attended that march. When we did the first march in remembrance of the Holocaust, only the rabbi turned out because they were too fearful. But they are definitely coming to realise that we have to stand up. And the same as the Christian community, there are many churches that we speak in, and there's always a remnant of Christians that will stand for Israel. But there are a lot that don't. We were in one church, and this lady, who I thought was a friend, came up to me and she said, I gotta go. And I was like, well, why? She said, I can't let the pastor see me talking to you because you stand for Israel. You know, we've lost friends, but you know, God is the God of Israel. Amen. And if we proclaim him as our Father, we have to be standing with him, and we have to be on the right side of history with him. We have to get in line with what he is doing, you know? And that, I think that is our priority. It doesn't matter what it costs us, and it will cost, it has cost us, but we have to stand and we have to do what God wants us to do. And if that means standing with his people at this time, that's what we do.
Excellent. So let's see you standing for Israel in Cardiff, and this is the march that was organised to raise the awareness of the plight of the Israeli hostages and also foreign nationalists still being held by Hamas in those hellholes that are the tunnels in Gaza.
Bridges for Peace UK and the Wales Friends of Israel group and the Jewish community in Cardiff were able to do a march through the streets on Sunday. It was attended by nearly 200 people, and we carried the posters of the kidnapped in Gaza and read out their names and lifted them into the public domain again to remind people of who these are people. These are people with families, with jobs, with lives, and that we need to keep that in people's minds in this whole terrible situation. We were grateful that we had very little opposition. The police said it was a very dignified and peaceful march, and they were glad to be there in attendance. And we had many passers-by saying that they support Israel, and they were glad to see us there doing what we were doing. But it was an important day and an important event for the Jewish community as well, as they bravely came out and stood against anti-Semitism too, that their voices won't be silenced. So we were glad that we were there, and we were glad to stand with them.
Just shows you how powerful it is when Christians stand in solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people, and that's what they need right now. Down to the last few minutes of the programme, Michael, and I certainly could interview you both for much longer because there's so much to unpack, but what should the Christian response be to October the 7th? What should be the Christian response to the only Jewish nation in the world, which is the nation of Israel, that's come under a horrific attack after experiencing the horrors of October the 7th?
I think one of the key things is prayer, because we're facing a Goliath of opposition. We're up against the media, we're up against the pro-Palestinian, or the propaganda and all these things. And at the beginning I was feeling overwhelmed. But I think we need to pray. We need to pray very strategically. One of the things I've been teaching as I go around is we need to pray for the salvation of the Palestinians and the Gazans. That is going to be the biggest change that we can get, is them to come to the Lord and receive Christ, a Jewish Messiah. That would be divine justice, and I would encourage people to pray for the salvation of the Jewish people.
It has happened a little bit in Gaza as well.
There are house groups there in the West Bank, Judea, Samaria. There are definitely little pockets of house groups and revivals and God is moving. God is never standing still. He's always doing something. And this is what we're getting at, is that we need to align ourselves with God's word. We need to understand the days that we're living in, and this is what Bridges does. Go on our webpage, get the teaching materials, get the weekly prayer updates, get this information that you're not getting on BBC and other news platforms. Get on Revelation TV and just look at what's there as well. There's so much information that people can glean, and it's going to inform your prayer life. So you can pray strategically according to what God is doing, and God is overlooking everything. And for the Jewish people, pray for the Jewish people, pray for shalom, the peace of Jerusalem, and reconciliation, and as the wars come to an end, that people will find a peace and be able to rebuild their lives again. And Bridges is there doing that, helping, and so are many other organizations as well, Christian organizations that we are all familiar with, are helping and will be there to help the rebuilding of the Jewish people.
Excellent. So let's have a look at how prayer is making a difference in Israel. And this is praying for the children who are suffering under not only Hezbollah's rocket and missiles, and that of Hamas, and then also the Iranian cruise missiles, and how prayer makes a difference.
A few days ago, we went up to the north to a town called Carmiel, and when we arrived, we heard the siren go off. And as soon as that siren went off, all of the children and all of the teachers start running for the bomb shelter. And some of the children were actually falling down the stairs because they were so frightened. When I walked in, I saw two little girls sitting over on the side wall, and they were just sobbing and crying. So I walked over to the little girls and I pulled out my phone and I showed them pictures of my own kids. And then the teachers started doing some simple hand claps and getting the kids to copy after them, and all of the kids perked up a little bit and cheered up a little bit, which was good. But definitely by the end of the time, I know that I felt shaken by all of it, and I can only imagine how these children feel on a regular basis. This is their life, running to the bomb shelter on a regular basis. That night, I didn't sleep well, and I had dreams about, rockets going off near me. I honestly can't imagine what it's like for these children who have to run to the bomb shelter on a regular basis, because they're living up north, where there's a lot of fighting happening right now. Another really interesting thing that happened was that as soon as we left the school, we drove just around the corner and we saw a crowd gathered underneath one apartment building. And so we pulled over to see what was going on, and we looked at the top of the apartment building, and there was pieces of one of the missiles that had just been shot down. And I was shocked, and I just thought, oh my goodness, God is a protector of these children. I want to encourage you, your prayers make a difference. These kids need your prayers. God's word commands us to bless Israel and to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And this is what we're called to do here as Christians, to come here and stand with Israel and to show them, never again. You're not alone, and you will never be alone.
And sometimes we have to place ourselves in the shoes of the Israelis to think, how would we live if we had to endure what Israel's had to endure, particularly the horrors of October the 7th, to endure the rockets and missiles that come over, and knowing that you've only got a few seconds to get to the bomb shelter, knowing that if you have children, that you have to have them very close at hand in case of the bombs or the missiles going off, and also the hatred that's been generated against Israel around the world. Why? Because Israel's defending herself. So these are things that we need to take into account when we really start praying for Israel. But for our viewers watching this program today, and they cannot be uninspired by the both of you and what you've been through and the work that you're doing to help Israel, but how can our viewers get involved and support the ministry that is Bridges for Peace? What are your needs?
So I would encourage you to go to the website www.bridgesforpeace.com. We do a weekly prayer letter, a monthly teaching letter, and a bi-monthly dispatch. Pray. You know, prayer is our mightiest weapon, you know. So pray, get involved, pray through the prayer letter. All the needs are in that prayer letter. But you know, you can go to Israel with Bridges, you can volunteer. We run a young people zealous program, which is an incredible program that just changes people's lives, and it changes the youth, you know, so they can go and impact their friends. Yeah, pray.
Yeah, wonderful. And what, in terms of support, do you need some of the vital aid projects that you do through Bridges for Peace? What would you say is the current need? Because we know that Israel, within 20 seconds.
So donate to the Crisis Fund, the Widows and Orphans, to the children's programs. These are the ones that are my favourite, that are making the biggest difference. They really are hitting home. They're flexible, we are reactive to what we are encountering, so those funds will go and help in those situations. So please just donate, it really does make
So Michael and Sian, thank you so much for being my guest on this week's edition of the Middle East Report. You've both done a fantastic job, thank you. And I want to thank you for watching this programme at home. No doubt you've been inspired, no doubt you've been motivated, not only to stand with Israel, but to step up your prayers and intercession, and to make that visible connection with Israel and the Jewish people, particularly the Jewish community in Wales and across the UK, who are feeling the pressure of the rise of Jew hatred. So thank you for watching this week's edition of the Middle East Report.